Hello. Welcome to the journey of exploring science and sleep, where seemingly simple questions open up unexpected mysteries about the universe, about time, and even about the human body itself. Tonight, we will not only look up at the starry sky or listen to the rhythm of nature, but also delve into the most familiar thing: sleep, the bridge between intellect, emotions, and life. If you want to continue this exciting journey with me, don't forget to subscribe and stay until the end of the video because what you are about to discover may change the way you look at sleep and at yourself. When we begin to explore the question, were humans intentionally placed here? The most reasonable starting point is always science. Science provides us with tools, evidence, and theories to understand the past. However, even though evolutionary models have painted a coherent picture of how life developed, there are still gaps that keep many people from stopping their questioning. It is precisely in the intersection between empirical evidence and mystery that human imagination flares up most strongly. Evolution through natural selection explains many things: why birds have wings to fly, fish have gills to breathe underwater, or giraffes have long necks to reach the treetops. Humans are also products of similar processes. Yet, upon closer observation, there are differences that make us seem like more than just a normally evolved species. The human brain is the clearest example. It is not only unusually large compared to body size, but also consumes enormous amounts of energy. On a biological level, sustaining such a brain seems uneconomical. But it is precisely that brain that brings the ability to abstract, to create art, to build language, and above all, to be conscious of our own existence. What puzzles people is not just the large brain, but also its sudden development. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors only made crude stone tools. Then suddenly, in a short span of time on the geological scale, art, symbols, agriculture, and then cities appeared. Archaeologists call this the cognitive revolution, a strange leap for which no satisfactory explanation has yet been found. Was that change simply the result of particular environmental conditions, or was there perhaps some push from outside? This is precisely the intersection between science and myth. Because when science cannot provide a clear answer, humans often return to the stories left by their ancestors. In countless ancient cultures, we encounter a recurring motif: humans being gifted knowledge from outside. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, visitors from the sky who gave them knowledge and tools to build civilization. The Dogon in West Africa have legends of messengers from Sirius who brought astronomical knowledge far beyond what the naked eye could observe. Indigenous tribes of the Americas passed down stories of people from the stars teaching them how to farm, hunt, and live in harmony with nature. Even the Bible begins with the image of humans being created and placed in a garden, not struggling to evolve from nothingness, but positioned into a ready environment. What is remarkable is not the historical accuracy of these stories, but their similarity across continents. Why did cultures that had no contact with one another share the same motif that humans were placed down and given knowledge? Was that just a way to explain the unknown, or a faint memory of something that truly happened? Here, another theory arises: the anthropic principle. It states that we see the universe and the earth as perfect for life because if it weren't, we wouldn't be here to observe it. This theory is logically sound, yet it doesn't erase the strange feeling that this planet seems prepared for us. Enough oxygen, enough water, a magnetic field protecting us from radiation, the perfect distance from the sun so it's neither too hot nor too cold. Such coincidences pile up to the point where it sounds like a design. Some scientists have also proposed the panspermia hypothesis, that life on Earth may not have originated here, but was seeded from space through comets or meteorites. If life's seed could come from elsewhere, could intelligence have arrived in the same way? Is it possible that some ancient civilization sowed the seeds of consciousness into humanity, accelerating an evolution that would otherwise have unfolded much more slowly? Such hypotheses may sound like science fiction, but they highlight a profound human need. We want to know if our existence has meaning. If everything is just an accident, then we are merely a byproduct of the universe. But if there is arrangement, whether by a divine hand, an ancient civilization, or even our descendants from the future, then our presence suddenly takes on a far greater significance. This question, were we placed here, is the thread connecting logic and emotion, science and myth. It both satisfies the thirst for evidence and nurtures the need to be told a story. And perhaps the very existence of this question is enough to prove one thing: humans do not live merely to survive, but also to seek meaning. If we admit that Earth is truly rare in the universe, then what makes that rarity important? Some scientists call this the rare Earth hypothesis, the idea that complex life requires the combination of countless factors, and they almost never repeat. Not only is a stable star like the Sun needed, but also an unusually large moon to keep Earth's axis stable. Not only liquid water is needed, but also tectonic plates to recycle carbon and maintain long-term climate. Not only an atmosphere is needed, but also a magnetic field to protect it. When you add all these conditions together, the probability of another planet replicating them becomes extremely small. This is one of the reasons many people find it hard to believe that everything is just random. If the probability is so low as to be almost zero, then why did it happen right here, and precisely at the time when we exist to observe it? This question is like a two-sided mirror. On one side, it emphasizes the fragility of life. On the other, it stirs doubt that perhaps someone or something has adjusted the parameters. Interestingly, modern cosmology also offers a concept that is quite similar: the fine-tuning principle. The fundamental physical constants, the speed of light, gravity, the Planck constant, seem to have values so precise that if they changed even slightly, the universe as we know it would not exist. A universe with stronger gravity might collapse into itself before stars could form. A universe with weaker gravity might never form galaxies. This entire universe, from the subatomic level to the galactic scale, looks as if it has been adjusted to allow life. This is not evidence that we were placed here, but it makes that question harder to ignore. Some thinkers explain the fine-tuning phenomenon with the multiverse hypothesis. If countless universes exist, each with different constants, then naturally at least one will look perfect, and that is the universe we are in. But this hypothesis opens another layer of mystery. If there truly are countless universes, why are we in this one and not somewhere else? Why do we have the ability to ask questions about our very existence? It is precisely at this point that the question, were we placed here, touches the essence of human consciousness. We do not just exist, we know that we exist. Humans can look at the night sky, feel their smallness, and at the same time dream of meaning beyond their reach. This yearning for meaning seems inseparable from humanity. And because of this, many cultures have told stories that place humans at the center of a grand plan. In Egyptian mythology, the gods taught humans how to farm and build. In Greek stories, fire, the symbol of knowledge, was stolen from the gods by Prometheus and given to humanity. In Indian culture, knowledge of the universe was inscribed in the Vedas, sacred hymns said to have been transmitted from the heavens. These myths can be seen as reflections of a deep human need. If we are too different from the other creatures, there must be a reason. But it is important to remember that science also provides a crucial reminder. The evolution of intelligence may be the result of many concurrent factors, from standing upright and freeing the hands to a high-energy diet thanks to cooking food and the growing complexity of social cooperation. Each small factor could have contributed to brain development. Yet the question remains, why did all these conditions converge in such a short time? And why was it humans and not dolphins, elephants, or any other species who crossed the threshold into symbolic cognition? This is fertile ground for bold hypotheses. Some speak of the possibility of directed panspermia, that life, even intelligence, was deliberately seeded by an extraterrestrial civilization. Others imagine a scenario in which people from the future traveled back to the past to ensure their own existence, like a self-sustaining time loop. Though they sound like science fiction, these scenarios reflect an eternal unease. Is our existence just random, or is there a guiding hand behind it? What is notable is that no matter which side you lean toward, pure science or metaphysical speculation, the question still has the power to change the way we see the world. If you believe everything is random, then every moment of existence becomes a rare miracle to be cherished. If you believe there is arrangement, then life is elevated to being part of a larger plan with responsibility and meaning. In both cases, human existence becomes far more significant than simply being an animal that happened to develop intelligence. When we stand under the starry sky, the question keeps returning. The universe is too vast for us to think we are unique. Yet at the same time, Earth is too perfect for us to easily believe it is only a coincidence. We are caught in between science and myth, between probability and belief, between chance and the possibility of being placed here. And perhaps it is precisely this contradiction that makes the question worthwhile. Because it is not only a problem of origins, but also a mirror reflecting humanity's longing for meaning. Whatever the final answer may be, accident or arrangement, the journey of seeking understanding is what truly defines us. The evolutionary path of humanity is like a book with missing pages. We see the fragments, fossils, tools, sites, and then try to piece them together into a coherent story. But the more we piece together, the more gaps appear, and it is precisely within those gaps that human imagination and curiosity flourish. What really happened in that strange moment when our ancestors branched off from the common flow of nature, creating language, art, and technology? Perhaps it was merely a coincidence of evolution, but perhaps it was some external push, visible or invisible. Let us pause and think about the explosion of human imagination. The paintings in Chauvet or Lascaux caves do not merely depict animals for hunting purposes. They are full of symbolism, aesthetics, and the desire to leave a mark of existence. Why would a brain designed only for hunting and survival devote time to art? Why did our ancestors not just live, but also want to tell stories, to dream, to leave behind a legacy beyond time? This surplus of creativity for many scientists remains a puzzle. For others, it looks like evidence that some spark was blown into humanity, the spark that myth calls Prometheus's fire or the gift of the gods. Language is the same. It did not evolve bit by bit like stone tools. It appeared like a sudden wave. When humans had language, it was already complex, rich in grammar, full of symbolism. There is no trace of a half language. And if language is a tool created by nature, why did it appear with such sophistication that it could write poetry, philosophy, and science? Many scholars believe this was simply the result of the brain reaching a certain threshold. But others think that perhaps humanity was given a superior cognitive tool, as if someone had placed a key in our hands, while opening the door was our responsibility. Here, we cannot ignore the strangeness of consciousness. Neurons fire electrical signals, chemicals transmit information. All of this can be explained biologically. But why is there subjective experience? Why is there a self that observes and asks about itself? Consciousness is not just a survival tool. A deer needs to know its predator, a bird needs to know the sky, but humans know death, know the vastness of the universe, and more importantly, know the fact of knowing itself. From an evolutionary perspective, consciousness of such depth seems extravagant. It consumes energy, causes existential unease, and sometimes makes us suffer more than be happy. So why did nature invest in it? Some hypotheses say consciousness is a byproduct, an accident of a complex brain. But others look at it and see a sign that humanity is not merely a random outcome. Consciousness, in some way, is like an invitation. It compels us to ask questions, to explore, to create, to go beyond instinct. It makes us look up at the stars, write poems, build monuments, and ponder the meaning of existence. If evolution's only purpose was survival, then consciousness seems to go far beyond the requirements. But if humanity was indeed placed here to seek, to recognize, to discover, then consciousness is the most important tool. Archaeological evidence also similar doubts. Structures like Göbekli Tepe appeared too early, far more complex than traditional theories allow. Ancient maps like the Piri Reis map seem to preserve geographical knowledge beyond the capability of their era. Myths of Atlantis, Lemuria, or lost civilizations may be mere stories, but they could also be faint memories of a chapter of history we do not yet understand. Each such question mark opens the possibility that humanity's developmental process was not entirely linear, not entirely spontaneous. And then there is one detail hard to ignore. Almost every culture on Earth has stories of humans being gifted knowledge. From Sumerian mythology to the Bible, from the tales of the Maya to Polynesian legends, everywhere there is the motif of beings coming from the sky, from the sea, from another world, bringing language, tools, laws, even life itself. Perhaps these are only metaphors, perhaps personifications of nature. But why does this refrain repeat across completely separate cultures? Could it be that humans everywhere shared the same intuition, that we received a push, some kind of placement, to become who we are? Of course, modern science does not easily accept the hypothesis of outside intervention. Fossil evidence, genetic data, archaeology all point to a natural evolutionary process spanning millions of years. But science also leaves gaps, and in those gaps, human imagination flourishes, asking, what made us become us? Perhaps the answer is not a divine force, nor extraterrestrials, but humanity itself in the future. A highly hypothetical idea. If humans, after millions of years of technological development, traveled back to the past to sow the seeds of their own evolution, would they not be the very ones who placed humanity here? This sounds like science fiction, but it highlights one thing. The question of whether we were placed here does not necessarily need to find its answer outside. Sometimes it can circle back to ourselves. And perhaps that is the greatest value of this entire reflection. Whether you believe in pure evolution or lean toward the hypothesis of arrangement, the question, were we placed here, still forces you to see the world differently. Instead of viewing Earth as a random foundation, you begin to see it as a gift. Instead of seeing consciousness as a mere byproduct, you begin to see it as an opportunity. And instead of thinking of your existence as an accident, you begin to see it as an invitation to live with meaning, with responsibility, and with vision. From the myths of the Sumerians, we can trace a red thread stretching across many ancient civilizations. The Egyptians spoke of gods from the sky, such as Osiris and Isis, who bestowed upon them knowledge of agriculture, laws, and rituals. In Greek mythology, Prometheus stole fire from the gods to give to humanity, not only physical fire, but also the symbol of knowledge, creativity, and autonomy. The Maya recorded stories of gods from the stars who taught them how to measure time and build calendars. Ancient Chinese tradition passed down the story of Fuxi and Nua, half-human, half-divine beings who laid the foundations for culture and laws of humankind. What is remarkable is that these stories, though born in different lands, share a common motif. Knowledge did not arise solely from human experience, but was granted from the outside. This repetition may be the result of universal imagination, humans everywhere tending to personify what they do not understand. But it may also reflect a faint collective memory of a real experience, that there were times when humanity felt the influence of a force beyond themselves. Archaeologists often point to the unexpected legacies left behind by ancient civilizations. The Egyptian pyramids, the colossal stones of Baalbek, the Nazca lines in Peru, or the perfectly interlocking blocks at Sacsayhuaman. Some scholars regard these as the fruits of labor, intellect, and persistent creativity of human beings. Yet many others, when standing before such structures, cannot help but feel something else, that they seem to transcend the technological limits of their time. This feeling, though perhaps an illusion born of admiration, nonetheless fuels the belief that humanity may have once been helped in building civilization. If we widen our perspective beyond Earth, we see another dimension. The universe is not a static place, but a continuous flow of energy, radiation, and matter. Earth has been struck many times by comets and asteroids, and each collision altered life. Some caused mass extinctions, but others spurred biodiversity. Perhaps these cosmic upheavals acted as silent architects, setting the stage for evolution and indirectly guiding humanity to its present place. From that viewpoint, the sky has indeed shaped our existence. And yet, whether from the perspective of myth or science, the central question remains: why did humanity develop in this direction? Why did intelligence, creativity, and the drive to rise above instinct become our essence? The answer may simply be because natural selection happened to go that way. But when observing the sudden leaps of history, the explosion of art, the simultaneous emergence of agriculture, the invention of language and writing, it is hard not to feel as though an invisible hand opened doors at just the right time. What is intriguing is that in modern philosophy, there is a perspective that humanity's very ability to ask questions is proof of the non-randomness of existence. No other animal, no matter how intelligent, asks about its meaning in the universe. Only humans lift their heads to the night sky, gaze at countless stars, and feel a longing that they belong to something greater. That longing gave rise to civilizations, religions, scientific revolutions, and journeys into space. If anything distinguishes humans from the rest of nature, it is not only intelligence, but also the relentless urge to seek answers. Some cosmologists go even further, suggesting that the universe might be fine-tuned for intelligent life. The fundamental physical constants, gravity, the speed of light, atomic structure, appear to be calibrated so precisely that if they differed even slightly, life could not exist. Is this merely random luck or a sign of design? This is not evidence, but a kind of philosophical astonishment. Yet that astonishment resonates with ancient intuitions that humanity was placed in a special position in the cosmos. And perhaps here we recognize an interesting paradox. No matter what the final answer may be, the very act of asking the question has defined humanity. If indeed we were arranged, then asking questions is proof of that arrangement. And if all is mere chance, then the ability to turn chance into meaning is the greatest gift nature has given us. Looking back at this journey, from hunter-gatherer tribes to ancient cities to satellites orbiting Earth, we see not only a picture of biological evolution, but also of spiritual evolution. And whether or not the question were we placed here has an answer, the question itself has become part of human identity. It reminds us that we exist not only to survive, but to seek, to imagine, and to endlessly transcend ourselves. What makes these ancient records and monuments fascinating is not only their grandeur, but also the traces that are difficult to explain. When we read ancient texts, we encounter a language that is both mythical and technical. When we observe monumental structures, we see layers of meaning that go beyond ordinary religious or political needs. All of this seems to suggest that in humanity's memory, there have been moments of contact, doors opening onto a greater reality. Skeptics often provide reasonable explanations: collective imagination, the need to seek order in chaos, or the remarkable ingenuity of our ancestors. And these are certainly true to some extent. Humans are inherently symbolic beings. We personify nature. We turn thunder into a thunder god, the sun into the supreme deity, the sea into a goddess. But when comparing cultures thousands of miles apart, a common denominator remains hard to ignore. The sky is never just a backdrop, it is the source, the cradle of power and knowledge. Consider the precision of ancient astronomy. The Maya measured the cycle of Venus with an error of less than a day after centuries of observation. The Egyptians aligned the pyramids with the stars to an incredible degree. The Sumerians left clay tablets describing planetary orbits, reminiscent of early astronomical diagrams. These achievements could not have arisen solely from superstition. They required generations of observation, recording, and transmission. This shows that even if there were no visitors from outside, at the very least there was a powerful drive urging humanity to connect with the cosmos. But the question is, why? Why did early agricultural communities devote such effort to arranging stones with solstices, tracking planetary movements, or creating star maps? The practical reason, seasonal farming, only explains part of it. Beneath it seems to lie a longing to touch something beyond survival, as if humans had known, from very early on, that their origins were not only in the soil but also in the sky. In Indian legend, the flying chariots Vimana are not only present in religious rituals, but are described with details of propulsion, speed, and aerial combat. In the memory of the Dogon people of West Africa, beings from Sirius are not only told in symbolic terms but accompanied by astronomical knowledge confirmed only by modern science. In Polynesian culture, stories of ancestors descending from the sky are not merely metaphors, but tied to precise navigation maps that allowed them to conquer the vast ocean. These examples do not prove the presence of extraterrestrial visitors, but they show that humanity's collective memory has bound the sky to the roots of civilization. This leads to a fascinating prospect. Perhaps humans have always been oriented to look beyond themselves. If our ancestors had never looked up and wondered, had never built Stonehenge to mark solstices, had never drawn Nazca lines pointing to the gods above, perhaps we would not have developed into who we are today. Perhaps it was precisely this longing, the urge to connect with the sky, that was the true catalyst of civilization. Today, modern science faces a similar paradox. When physicists speak of the universe's fine tuning, when they realize that fundamental constants are strangely set to allow life to exist, they are touching the same intuition our ancestors once had, an intuition that the universe is not mere chaos, but has an order, an orientation. Our ancestors called them gods, visitors from the heavens. We call them probability, cosmology, the multiverse. But the sense of awe remains the same. Like mythology, science does not provide absolute affirmations, but continuously poses hypotheses. One experiment may refute a hypothesis, but open up 10 new ones. One myth may be explained as symbolism, but it still raises the question, why did humans create that very symbol? Seen this way, myth and science are not two separate paths, but two different forms of the same aspiration, the aspiration to understand our place in the universe. And that is what makes the monuments, myths, and collective memories of humanity so precious. They are not certain proof that we were placed here by some force, but they are proof that since the dawn of history, humans have always felt that way, felt that they were connected to an origin beyond Earth, felt that progress came not only from their hands, but also from some mysterious spark. When we stand before pyramids, stone statues, or faintly carved inscriptions, we do not only see the works of a bygone era. We are looking into the mirror of humanity's soul, a creature both small and grand, bound to the earth yet yearning for the sky. And perhaps it is precisely this tension between the ground and the heavens that drives us to continue the search. So the question is not only, were we placed here? The real question is, why can we never stop feeling that way? And if the whole of human history, from mythology to science, reflects the same intuition, then perhaps that intuition is the deepest part of our nature. One remarkable fact is that although each civilization had its own language and context, all placed their focus on a junction between earth and sky. It could be a stone pillar, a pyramid, a temple, a circle, or lines carved into the desert. To us today, these are archaeological sites, but to the ancients, they were gates. Gates to where? To the universe, to the gods, or simply to a reality they believed had always existed beyond the sky. It is this consistency that forces us to ask, is it only a coincidence of human psychology, or is it the trace of a shared experience once lived by all humanity? When we look back at those structures, we see not only technical ingenuity, but also a kind of sign language. The Egyptians did not simply bury pharaohs in pyramids. They created a stone staircase pointing to the stars, as if the king's soul would step upward, returning to the celestial realm. The Maya did not merely build the Temple of Kukulkan for ritual. They turned the entire pyramid into a colossal calendar, where light and shadow met as a reminder that humanity lives in the intersection of Earth and cosmos. The Nazca did not simply draw birds, fish, and monkeys on the desert floor. They created a map that walkers could never see in full, as if it were meant for observers from above. It is here that human imagination meets modern science, because the why questions the ancients asked still echo in today's science. When we launch the Hubble or James Webb Space Telescopes or send probes to Mars, we are continuing the same train of thought, to know where we came from and whether anyone else is out there. The ancients carved these questions into stone. We write them with data, equations, and satellite imagery. Strangely, the more we advance, the more science gives us data that makes myth seem not entirely unreasonable. When astronomers confirmed that Sirius is indeed a binary system, the Dogon memory of a companion star was no longer mere naive invention. When archaeologists discovered that Göbekli Tepe may record a meteor shower tens of thousands of years ago, those carved pillars became a kind of cosmic bulletin instead of mere ritual objects. When engineers realized the precision of the pyramids far surpassed the tools believed to exist at that time, the question, how did they do it, became not only a physics problem, but also a challenge to our understanding of the past. Perhaps everything does have a natural explanation. Perhaps the Dogon merely guessed correctly. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe only reflects artistic imagination. Perhaps the pyramids were simply the result of massive labor. But when these perhaps repeat themselves everywhere, in civilizations that never communicated, another feeling creeps in. Maybe we are rereading notes someone left behind. In fact, it is this very obsession that has nourished human culture. From Greek mythology telling of Prometheus bringing fire to mankind, to the Bible's story of Jacob's ladder connecting heaven and earth, to Chinese philosophy viewing the mandate of heaven as the source of power, all revolve around one belief: knowledge and order come from above. And that belief, whether metaphorical or real, pushed humanity beyond mere survival. We did not just hunt and farm, we lifted our heads, predicted the seasons, calculated the stars, and built societies, laws, and philosophies. Today, when science explains many phenomena once considered mystical, some claim that mythology has expired. But that is not quite true. Mythology does not die, it transforms. It becomes science fiction stories, hypotheses about multiverses, about time travel, about extraterrestrial beings. Instead of saying the gods descended from the sky, we say aliens visited or future humans traveled back. The story changes, but the longing remains the same. We want to believe we are not alone, that human evolution has a purpose, that someone or something awakened our potential. But there is another way to read it, more humble. Perhaps there were no visitors at all. Perhaps it was humans themselves with their eyes and minds who invented those visitors as a means of overcoming limitations. For when you believe someone is watching from above, you will build structures aligned precisely. When you believe the gods gave knowledge, you will patiently observe the sky for generations. When you believe you come from somewhere higher, you will never stop searching, and it is that very search that created civilization. What matters is not the answer, but the power of the question. The pyramids, Nazca, Stonehenge, Göbekli Tepe, the Moai, all may be evidence of external intervention, but they are certainly evidence of an inner drive, the drive to rise, to leave traces, to send a message across time. And in that sense, whether we were truly placed here or not, one thing is undeniable: humanity has always acted as if it were connected to the sky. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery. Not the question of whether visitors ever came, but why. Since the dawn of time, we have never been able to stop looking up and imagining that someone is looking back. And if that imagination is strong enough to take us from stone circles to space telescopes, then perhaps, even if no one has come, we are already ready to become the visitors of other worlds. When we think about the theory of panspermia, we often imagine single-celled microbes drifting through the vastness of space, clinging to the surface of an asteroid, waiting for the chance to land on a warm and fertile planet. That idea is both simple and overwhelming, for it turns the universe into a giant field, where every speck of stardust might carry the seeds of life. But if we look deeper, we realize that panspermia is not only an explanation for biological origins, but also a broad philosophical framework, reframing the question of the role of intelligence and intention in the process of evolution. Imagine this. In nature, a gardener plants seeds into the ground and leaves most of the work to wind, rain, and sunlight. The gardener does not need to intervene at every moment, but their presence is fundamental. They prepared the soil. They chose the seeds. If we apply this image to the universe, life on Earth may be the same. Perhaps the environment, the physical constants, and those seemingly random chains of chance are in fact the soil, water, and light arranged to nurture us. From the perspective of the seed, that is, from our perspective, everything appears to happen naturally. But behind that naturalness, could there be an invisible hand? What is interesting is that the image of a cosmic gardener appears not only in modern science, but also resonates through ancient myths. Civilizations in Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, or India all told stories of gods who planted knowledge for humanity, gifting fire, teaching farming, granting writing or laws. Those stories, though mythological in color, still reflect a deeply human intuition, that we did not simply appear, but were prepared, supported by some intelligence beyond our comprehension. Even in stories of floods, rebirth, or destruction, we still see the shadow of a gardener pruning, clearing, and letting the garden grow again. Modern science fiction continues to nourish that idea. From movies to novels, we encounter images of alien civilizations seeding DNA, watching from afar, or experimenting on new worlds. Though fictional, these stories reflect a profound human longing. We want to believe that life has a purpose, that our journey is not just the product of blind chance, but part of a greater plan. However, that does not necessarily mean a god in the traditional religious sense. The higher intelligence we are contemplating may be entirely non-human, operating on scales we can hardly grasp. A being that lives millions of years might view our evolution as a farmer observes the changing of seasons. A technology based entity existing as a vast network across the cosmos might see life as a kind of large scale experiment. Or more simply, the universe itself may carry within it a principle of self organization, an invisible will, guiding matter and energy toward complexity, intelligence, and life. At this point, the question becomes deeper. If we truly are seeds in a cosmic garden, then who or what is the gardener? Is it an advanced civilization millions of years ahead of us? Or is it the very structure of the universe, a natural law we have only begun to glimpse? A common counterargument is often raised: we do not need a gardener to explain life. Evolution, physics, and chemistry are sufficient to explain complexity without external intervention. Indeed, the discoveries of Darwin and modern biologists have shown that life can arise from basic principles without a metaphysical hand. But even within that scientific framework, one mystery remains. Why are the physical constants of the universe so finely tuned for life? Why is there starlight, chemical elements from supernovae, and planets with the right conditions for life to form? The question why still hangs in the air, and in that gap, the image of the gardener reappears. We should also look at ourselves. Humans, in just a few thousand years, have begun to do the work of gardeners toward life itself, breeding plants, domesticating animals, editing genes, creating artificial microbes. What we do today on a small scale may be a reflection of what an advanced civilization once did on a cosmic scale. If we can sow the seeds of life on Mars or distant planets in the future, why exclude the possibility that something similar happened to Earth long ago? And so we return to the initial question: are we one of those seeds? If so, what does that mean for our existence? Perhaps the meaning does not lie in finding a definitive answer, but in the very act of asking. Just as the seed knows nothing of the gardener but still grows, blossoms, and bears fruit, so too does humanity. We continue to explore, build, create, and in the process, we plant the very question of our own origin and purpose. Perhaps we will never receive an answer from the gardeners, if they exist. Perhaps it is all just metaphor. But the metaphor still matters, for it gives us a perspective that life is not a meaningless accident, but part of a larger picture. And in the journey to find that picture, every question, every hypothesis, every dream we nurture are themselves new seeds planted in the garden of human imagination. If this hypothesis is true, then our view of ourselves will be transformed at its very root. Instead of waiting for distant gods or alien civilizations to sow the seeds of life, perhaps it is we ourselves, the future version of humanity, who have become the gardeners of our own existence. That idea may sound paradoxical at first, but it opens up a strange prospect. The history of humankind is not a straight line from origin to present, but a closed loop in which the beginning and the end merge. We are both the result and the cause, both the seed and the sower. In this model, time is no longer an indifferent ruler, but becomes a river that can bend, branch, and reconnect in unimaginable ways. Imagine this. In a distant future, humanity has advanced beyond measure. They no longer struggle with the fears of war, disease, or climate catastrophe as we do today. They have mastered energy, conquered space, and, most importantly, unraveled the essence of time. They no longer merely look back at the past through books or fossils, but can actually return, stepping into the primordial moment when Earth was still a nascent planet. There, they might plant the first microorganisms, or even adjust certain key evolutionary steps to ensure that their civilization, which exists in the future, has the foundation to arise. In this way, future humans do not merely observe history, they rewrite and sustain it, like a gardener meticulously tending each branch in their garden. If that happens, then the entire history of evolution could bear the invisible traces of intervention. The strange leaps from the emergence of eukaryotic cells to the Cambrian explosion of life, or even the sudden appearance of human intelligence, may not be mere accidents. They could be nodes, stitches, that gardeners from the future have refined to ensure the tree of evolution does not break. And if so, then every human being today in their DNA carries not only the story of life from chemical molecules, but also a message from our own distant descendants. A message sent backward through time. We have been here and we will always be here. Of course, this idea raises a series of paradoxes. If we sow the seed for ourselves, then who sowed the seed for the future humans in the first place? Is there a first generation outside the loop, or is it all just an infinite cycle without an absolute beginning? This is the chicken and egg paradox at the cosmic scale. But instead of collapsing the hypothesis, that paradox makes it even more compelling. It forces us to admit that the concept of origin may be far more complex than simply tracing back to a single starting point. Perhaps in the universe, beginning is not an event, but a circular structure where cause and effect intertwine to the point of inseparability. Going further,